Hello and welcome. I am the Armchair Audiophile, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Tanchjim Hana. Doing my best to pronounce that brand name, but I think it's Tanchjim. This is a single dynamic driver IEM, 32 ohm impedance, and it retails for $159. But the reason this particular unit is on my desk is that I'm a sucker for exotic driver materials, and for the Hana, Tanchjim has partnered with a Japanese firm to develop a polymerized liquid crystal diaphragm, which they claim is capable of total harmonic distortion less than 0.2%. For perspective, the Tin Hi-Fi T2 Plus that released recently is rated for max THD of 1 full percent, whereas the Sennheiser HD600 is rated for THD at 0.1% and the HD650 at 0.05%. So, in terms of distortion, these claim to be performing a lot closer to a reference headphone than a budget IEM. Now, I would usually do the unboxing and first impressions on camera, but when I got these last week, I absolutely had to hear them, and to spoil the surprise a little bit, they're really, really good. But before we get into sound and run through a few tracks, let's take a look at build and accessories. The packaging is excellent. This is easily on par with anything you'd get from a Western company, although keeping with the recent trend of anime girl mascots, I think we can assume safely this is supposed to be Hana. Whole vibe isn't really my thing, but it is a thing, so that's Hana if you're interested. In the box, we have two different sets of ear tips. One of them is a wide bore set for treble emphasis. One of them is a narrow bore set for bass emphasis. And the stock set of tips that comes installed from the box are an additional set of medium narrow bore tips. I haven't played around with the wide bore tips yet, but frankly, I like the bass response where it is. I probably will experiment with that, but the treble is really nice as it stands, and I don't know that it needs accentuation, certainly not at the expense of bass. On top of that, they come with a few extra sets of nozzle screens and this really nice matching zipper case. It's hard shell with a soft touch pleather. It's branded, keeps that white and rose gold theme going. It's really nice and something I really like to see. I'm glad that they didn't go with the sort of magnetic clasp style that I've complained about in the past, because it really doesn't hold up to being put into a bag. But with this zipper setup, it should be just fine. Getting down to the IEMs themselves, these are the same stainless steel shells from the Tanchjim Oxygen, but this time they are finished in a white and rose gold. Oh God! A white and rose gold paint job. If I can get the focus pull right here. There we go. A white and rose gold paint job. It's very solid. Feels very premium, frankly above its price point. It fits nicely. The nozzle is a little bit shallow. I find myself having to readjust their seating in my ear a little bit more often than I might with another unit, but it wasn't enough to be bothersome or compromise the music experience. They are beautiful, just overall. Come on, there we go. Nope. The brand Tanchjim supposedly translates to Angel Prosperity, which I think is what this logo is about. The cable is nice. It is a low capacitance, low inductance cable with matching Y-split and plug. I'm not sure how I feel about the jacket. Damn, it's really not coming in on camera. I'm not sure how I feel about the jacket. It's kind of plasticky. I'm curious to see how it holds up over time to sort of skin oils and whatnot. But it's a nice supple cable. It's not tangly. It feels pretty nice and it sounds good. So no complaints from me yet. But of course, if we get into reliability issues, that's something I would update you guys on. Now, with that covered briefly, we can get back down to sound. The overall signature of this unit is pretty close to my ideal. Really nicely extended treble without being shouty or blary or sharp. Elevated upper mid-range with a smooth mid-range to bass transition. Really nice punchy bass. And then some roll-off as we ride into the sub-bass region. However, they have a really interesting bass sensation that I'll comment more specifically on as we get into the sound impressions. So, to that end, I've got the high BR5 here. I'm going to pop these into my ears, and we'll run through some impressions. I'm going to start with the more electronic and hip-hop side of things before riding into some more jazz, acoustic, and sort of spatial, binaural stuff. But there's a reason. We'll see. Okay, we're hooked up here. To start out, I'm going to go with Gladio by Comtrues. This is a song I've used in the past. Really great bass punch. A lot of very precise synths going on. A lot of very layered synths, each with their own modulations and texture. And there's just so many hard cuts. It's a very fast song with a lot going on, and it lets you get an idea for the speed and the layering capabilities of a driver. So that's where we're going to start. So in terms of speed, attack and decay are excellent. The percussion on this track sounds great. Dynamic range is also really good. These synths aren't all at the same volume, and they're not all in both channels. You know, some of them are panning around, some of them a lot quieter than others, and the Hana does a really good job of separating those out and letting you sort of look around the song with your ears and pick out each individual synth. And again, it just has great bass punch. Overall, a really pleasant experience for this kind of music. It just sort of like swells and throbs. And in terms of pace, rhythm, and timbre, the Hana keeps up perfectly, and it doesn't lag, and it's not so aggressive that it adds a level of harshness. Overall, just lovely. So from there, I'm going to move on to... Oh, wait, hold on. We just hit a particular part of the song I really enjoy. There's a high-pitched synth that's getting modulated a lot. It's around 2 minutes, 20 seconds. And it's just such a... I don't know. I love the complexity of that modulation. Check it out on this track if you want to hear it yourself. For my next track, I'm actually going to pop over to Amazon Music HD, and we're going to listen to Work Paid for That by Lil Dicky. Now, this isn't really a great audiophile track or anything, but I noticed on this track more than any other, the very particular and unique and interesting bass quality of this unit. It's hard to describe. It's like a lot of time you can hear some sub bass roll off, but there's also this sense of air motion, almost like an LFE sensation. Like even when the sub bass sounds like it's rolling off, like you can still feel the driver moving that air, and it gives you a really interesting sense of fullness and weight. And that's something that stands out really clearly on this track. I mean, right from the rip. And actually, it's also another good example of the sort of soundstage capabilities of this unit. The sort of ad-libs for the track are, in the left and the right, pretty far out, and they're quieter than the primary vocal, obviously, and you can really make out that sense of space and distance. They're not a massively wide headphone, but the treble extension is very airy, and the imaging and separation is very good. So you get a sense of spaciousness, if not immense width. But yeah, this is one of those tracks, like, the bass just feels huge and weighty in a way that not a lot of my other headphones really seem to be able to represent. And obviously hip-hop is often a vocal-focused art form, and the vocals are nicely presented. Vocal timbre is on point. It's almost hard to describe because I'm having a lot of fun listening to them. It's a good headphone when I'm getting too sort of sucked in, to be precise. Right here, right at this point in the song, there's a breakdown in the middle of the beat where the main bass line goes from a single note to a triplet, and it's pretty low in the mix. And It's something I hadn't noticed before until I heard it on this and then started looking for it. And you can't really make it out on something like the BL05 or even really the T2 Plus. It's one of those really particular things that these do. That's our little foray into Amazon Music HD. I'd like to take a moment, give a big shout out to fellow reviewer Farsil the Wizard for putting me on his Amazon HD plan. I'll put a link to his channel in the video description. Check it out. He's a fun dude, great ear, and he's doing some really exciting things with headphone modding that you should keep an eye out for, because I think he's got big things coming in the future. Now that we've covered sort of electronic and hip-hop, we're going to ride into another one of my sort of standards, which is one of several tracks from Riot Jazz Brass Band. We're going to do Paradox instead of Suspicious Bulge today for a little bit of variety, but this is really a test of tone. Horns are obviously a very easy to screw up instrument on a headphone. They will, much like strings, they will reveal ugliness because they cover pretty wide segments of the frequency range, particularly when you have a horn ensemble. You're just getting so many tones that are actually quite similar, and you need to separate them out. They could easily be shouty. So we're going to jump in here. We're going to take a look at the tonality and that texture. So right from the get-go, imaging is excellent. You know, there's a trumpet in the sort of upper right of the image. You've got, I think, a trombone center left with the tuba below that. Drum kit is dead center of the image. Snare sounds really clean. I'm not getting any sort of like treble fatigue from the horns, but you can still tell that the treble is extending. It's not rolled off. It's just smooth and nicely articulated. I will say the tuba sounds like 5% too full. Like just a tiny bit blown out. I've listened to this playlist on the Ether C Flow just for reference, and the tuba does come through a little hotter than normal. But otherwise, I really can't find complaint with this song. Right now, there's a little tick 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 on the hi-hat. Sounds great. Cymbal timbre maybe a little bit dry, just a little. And at this point in the song, about 1:40 in, there's a trumpet solo going on. The trumpets sort of move to center right and back a ways. You get a nice sense of space. And this is also a very fast percussion track. And again, Attack and Decay are basically perfect. You know, there's no real smearing to the snare. It's all very, very tight, but also very rhythmically pleasing. I think my main observation about this headphone over the last week has been that it is an aggressive and technical IEM, but while still walking the fine line of being fun for everyday listening. And that's sort of what I want. I want almost too much detail with sort of a warmer than neutral mid-bass by a little bit. But otherwise, like, this is really what I want to hear. So now we're going to roll into a little bit of Nina Simone. This really blew me away. We're going to do Tell Me More and More and Then Some, live in New York, 1965. This is incredible on these. You know, Nina Simone's vocal timbre is just dead on. Right channel, there is a harmonica, and it's holographic. I mean, holographic is a word that gets thrown around in audio a lot. I mean, usually higher up in the price range than this, but the jazz backing for this track is truly holographic, which is something that's wonderful to be able to say about $160 IEM. You know, 5 years ago or so when I got into this and you had stuff like the LZA4 for $200, this is, you know, whooping $200 IEMs from a few years ago. Oh yeah, the piano is like bottom right and bottom left and a little bit back, and just sounds gorgeous. Upright bass, exactly the right amount of reverberation and texture. And this is, again, another example of the soundstage where it doesn't sound extremely wide, but it sounds very spacious because of the imaging, the airiness to the treble. You know, you get a really good image, and it does not feel compressed or constrained or narrow, but it doesn't sound infinitely wide. I'd say slightly above average, medium soundstage, but with an above average sense of air and space. Oh, man, every time that harmonica comes in. Okay, I'm going to keep this moving. Yoshi Horukawa, Stars. This is a great test album. It was recorded binaurally, and there are such incredible spatial effects in this. This particular track opens with a sort of birdscape and a train approaching in the distance and passing you. Also, this really nice ethereal piano with a wet reverb on it as the birds chirp. It's just a serene experience. This is almost meditative. Here comes the train slowly approaching from the left. Ugh. Yoshi Horukawa really is breathtaking on a good set of headphones. Jump a little bit further ahead because this song sort of builds into something really gorgeous. Yeah, this song is really about imaging, spatial performance. I remember when I reviewed the 10P1 really early in the channel's life, this album sounded not great on them at all because they had such a narrow soundstage. They neutralized the spatial effects of this track. And the Hanas are the exact opposite. You get a truly stunning sense of atmosphere and space on these. Oh, okay. 2 minutes, 55 seconds in. I think an upright bass comes in as well as some distant and reverbed percussion. And this is another, sort of moment of exquisite dynamic range because you've got this really thick, powerful upright bass and you've got very quiet, like ethereal, I think it's an electric piano of some kind, up and back, and it just sort of becomes part of the atmosphere of the song. I think I've said everything I can say listening. I'm going to put this down for a moment and we're just going to review before we wrap this up. Okay. The Tanchjim Hana. I am in love with these. These are really, really, really something special. If you're in the market for something like a Moondrop KXXS, I highly recommend that you check these out. Frankly, even if you're in the market for a multi-driver hybrid at this price point, these perform so well on a technical level that I think we're approaching a point where multi-driver hybrids may be becoming sort of redundant or obsolete because single dynamics are getting so good. A few years ago, obviously, we had the driver wars. More drivers is more better. But this year, with things like the T2 Plus and the FD1, the Hana, the single dynamic driver is back. This is the year that the single dynamic reclaims its rightful place after the driver wars. This is a beautifully tuned headphone. I think I can safely say it's my new favorite. And considering that I have things in my collection well above this price point, that is saying a lot. So I love them. These are getting the absolute unqualified Armchair Audiophile recommendation. Feel free to at me if you don't like them. And yeah, that's all I got. If you're into high technicality with a dash of, not even a dash of fun, if you're into high technicality without sacrificing fun, this is the headphone for you. I really think everybody should try these because they're blowing me the absolute F away. And with that, I'd like to invite you back to the channel in the near future. We've got some more content coming up. Check out the Patreon. We have a private Discord server. We have one patron in there right now. Big thanks to Burger Bassist for supporting the channel. If you are interested in any of the products you've seen here today, there will be links in the video description. That's it for me, the Armchair Audiophile, reminding you that life is too short for bad headphones.